Welcome to House of Shachah, where we talk everything worship. And we started in our last episode and talked about Pasaka. And we talked about Easter bunnies and just demystified Easter. And today we're going to go ahead and just talk about the biblical foundation of worship. Very important.
Yes.
Biblical foundation of worship.
Yes.
And I am with
Alicia, one more time. And we are privileged to have our Gen Z pastor around. It's always an honor to have
Always
Reverend
an
Jesse
honor.
around.
Yeah.
And today he will be helping us unravel this because we really need to understand the biblical foundation of worship.
Yes.
Karibu Rev.
Thank you.
Karibu sana.
Thank you, guys.
Is music worship? Is worship music?
Is music worship? Is worship music?
That's a big question.
Yeah.
Good
Yes.
question. And I think it's a good place to start because a lot of times when just the average Christian, the average person, normally cannot conceive or perceive worship beyond music.
Yeah.
So most of us, we actually believe that worship is music, music is worship.
Yes.
All right? And we cannot tell the difference.
Yeah.
But I like to say this, that worship is not music.
Music.
Worship is bigger
Wow.
than music.
Okay.
Music and the Christian songs that we sing, praise and worship and what have you, the hymns
Yes.
and what have you,
Yes.
are just but one of the avenues or one of the vehicles
Of worship.
that we use to worship God. It's a gift God has given to us. It's a gift of creativity that God has given to us so that
Yes.
we can make a joyful noise to Him.
Yes.
But our biblical worship is bigger than that.
Bigger than
Because in the scriptures, from Genesis, from the very, very beginning, there was no music. I mean, don't see any mention of music. But there was worship going on from the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Was
the
there
Garden of
worship in Eden?
Yes, there was.
was worship.
Because man was in a perfect state. Adam was in a perfect state
Yeah.
in the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Eden basically means the place of God's presence.
Wow.
Really. I mean, it's a beautiful place. What does worship do? Worship brings us into the presence of God.
Yeah.
So
The
before
presence of
sin
God.
came, man was always in God's presence.
Wow.
Touching
Always
God's
in
presence.
worship.
Yes, always
it's
in worship with
continuous
God.
worship.
Wow.
You know,
That
that
is
God
really
will come
deep,
in the cool
yeah.
of the day and they will
Deep
take
stuff.
a walk.
Yeah.
What is worship? Worship is really taking a walk with the Lord.
Yeah. It's
Wow.
Isn't it?
personal.
It's personal. Like
Yeah.
when I'm singing and
That is very mind-blowing.
isn't it? That's basic. So that was the Garden of Eden gives us a beautiful, perfect picture of how worship looked like at before sin came.
Yes.
But then when sin came, it interrupted that flow. It interrupted that perfect place, that perfect
Yeah.
union that man
The
had with God.
distortion, yes.
The distortion. And
Yes.
then God now put together a redemptive plan.
Wow.
And what is a redemptive plan? To bring back man into his presence.
Into his presence. To a place
Because you
of
see
worship.
now, man had been separated from God because of sin.
Yes.
Because God cannot stand sin. All right. So the redemptive plan from the very, very beginning was really to bring back man into
his
God's
presence.
Back to
Yes,
his
back
presence.
into
to
his presence.
Yeah.
So you find music, okay, apart from maybe the Song of Moses in the
Yes.
book of Exodus.
Yes.
You remember when they crossed the Red Sea?
Yes.
Yeah.
Then, in fact, I normally say Moses was not a musician,
Yeah.
but he's actually the first recording artist.
Yes.
Yes. He is.
Because his song is recorded in the Bible.
Yes, it is.
All right?
Yeah.
And
Beautiful
then, of course,
song.
Then
A
the
very
first
beautiful
worship
one.
leader was who?
Miriam.
Picked up a tambourine
Yes.
and they started dancing there by the,
Yes.
just the horse and the rider,
Yes.
was thrown into the sea and what have you. But it was until later, now, of course, after they crossed, the Exodus had been delivered from Egypt and what have you.
Yes.
Then, of course, now God establishes these guys as his own people. And then he puts together in Leviticus the sacrificial system of worship. You remember there was all kinds of sacrifices.
Yes.
If I sinned, there was a sin offering I
Yes.
could offer.
Yes.
Maybe if I'm blessed with a baby, I
Yes.
could take a Thanksgiving offering and what have
A
you.
cleansing
A
sacrifice.
cleansing,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
of course the whole priesthood.
Yes.
Aaron being the first high priest.
Yeah.
So there was a whole establishment of worship.
Of
Yeah.
worship.
All this, remember, worship is always about bringing people back into God's presence,
God's
isn't it?
presence.
All right?
Yes.
So if you sin, you offer sacrifice, then you're cleansed. Then on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, the sins of the whole nation will be atoned for.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
All right, on that
Yes.
one day of
Yeah.
the year, and we don't have time to look at the whole thing that will happen there. It was until the time of David.
Yes.
David is the one who actually introduces music into the temple. David was not a priest
Yes.
in the real sense of the priest,
Yeah.
but he wore the heart of a king priest and a prophet.
Yes.
All right, the only guy in the Bible. That's why God says, "I have found me a man after mine own heart." David was the only guy who would actually fulfill the role of a priest without consequences.
Yeah.
He will go into the temple and eat the shewbread, without consequences.
Wow.
Yes.
When anybody else tried, I can't remember, there's a guy who tried that in the Bible,
Yeah.
and he was actually judged.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. But David, because he's
Found
a picture
favor.
of Christ.
Yes.
All right. So he's the one who introduces music, and when he introduces music, it's really organized music. There's the sons of Asaph.
Yes.
Yes.
Asaph, Jeduthun.
Yeah.
Yes, Jeduthun.
And I've forgotten the other
Exactly.
guy. Yeah.
And because David also was a musician.
Yeah.
Yes, he was.
He played instruments.
Yeah,
he was also a
Heman.
songwriter.
Yeah.
He was a songwriter.
Yeah.
And probably maybe 50% or
Yes.
more of the psalms we have today
Yes.
were actually written by David.
Absolutely.
Many of them were hymns and
Yeah.
songs. You know.
Yeah.
So it was on until that time. But remember, the very foundation of worship was not music.
It was
That is
worship.
very important.
Was the
Very
redemption.
important.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The very foundation of worship was actually redemption.
Yeah.
All right. And we find that all the way in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
And then now music comes in later. But I think now maybe with time, we, with the advent of the praise and worship movement, which is very recent,
Yes.
just so you know, because this is something that probably in the 19th century is when we started using those kind of terminologies,
Yeah.
praise and worship in the church and what have you. Then now people started just equating worship and music.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Then now so most people don't know anything apart from music in worship. So this is what I normally say.
Yes.
If you have to wait until Sunday morning to come and worship
Come on.
Worship
through
the
singing,
Lord.
Come on.
you're not a worshiper.
Ah,
You're not a worshiper.
If you're waiting for the music.
If you're waiting for the music, then you're
You're not a
probably not a
worshiper.
worshiper. Because worship extends even to the way I live.
Yeah.
Yes.
I cannot, sorry to say, to use
Yes.
this maybe graphic, I cannot live like a devil from Monday to Friday or
Yeah.
Monday to Saturday.
yeah.
And then on Sunday, for 2 hours, I come and sing hymns and
Yeah.
I'm a worshiper.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
All right? From Monday to Friday, every day of the choices that I make. This is how I like to put it. Very simple terms. So maybe I'm stopped by a traffic policeman
Yeah.
on the
On
road.
the road.
He wants a bribe. And at that point, I have a choice to make. I say, you know what? Because I'm a believer, I cannot give you a bribe. Let whatever happens, I don't
Happens.
care.
Yeah.
Let it happen.
Yes.
At that place that I have said no because
Yeah.
of who I am in Christ, I have raised an altar of worship.
Wow.
Worship.
That's what worship is.
Because Yahweh has been worshipped.
Yahweh has been glorified.
Yes.
Yes.
Isn't it? So whatever choices I make, I'm in business.
Yeah.
If I decide I'm doing clean business,
Yeah.
and there's temptation maybe for that tender, at that place when I make that choice, I've actually raised an altar of worship. Every time before I leave the house, I bow my knee and maybe make a prayer. That is worship. All right.
Yeah.
When I have food on the table with my family and I lead them in prayer
Yeah.
of thanksgiving,
Yeah.
we are acknowledging that this food was not possible except by God.
By
with
God's
God.
grace. Yeah.
That's worship in itself.
Worship is a
Deep
lifestyle.
stuff.
It's a lifestyle. It's who
lifestyle.
we are.
Yeah.
So that now when we come to church together on Sunday, and that is why we should always come together to church
Yeah.
on Sunday.
Yeah.
To church on Sunday, we have what we now call corporate worship.
Yes.
Is now where we come.
We come together.
And remember, now this is the power of music. First, it's creativity,
yes.
and it's a way of us expressing our thanksgiving,
Yeah.
our worship to God, of course, through creative ways, because music is beautiful.
Yes.
I'm a
It is.
musician, so I love
Yes.
music.
Music
yes,
is
yes.
very beautiful.
It's beautiful,
Very
wonderful.
Yeah.
But now imagine as you were singing that song, all of us together in church, do you realize the power of music? That's the one time all of us are saying the same thing to God at the same time.
Yes.
Wow.
1,000 of you
Wow.
are saying the
The
same,
same
thing,
thing.
Wow.
to God.
That's how
That
deep
is a
it
sound that is beautiful in the ears of God. All right, because we don't worship in a vacuum.
Yes.
I cannot decide I'm withdrawing from humanity. Let me go and live in some island somewhere
Yeah.
by myself. No,
No, you can't.
Worship must also be
As the
corporate.
modern John the Baptist.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what worship really is all about. But music has now its place.
Yes.
Because again, now the gift of music, as we worship together, it helps us to focus on God. It helps us to declare the goodness of God and what have you. And somehow, as we do that, it's a mysterious thing, but it attracts the presence of God.
Yes.
Remember, worship is always supposed to bring us into
The presence of
into
God.
His
God's
presence.
presence.
That's why when we can start singing a song and suddenly the atmosphere changes, and you sense something is
Something
different.
is happening.
Yeah, you can't even explain
can't
it.
tell.
Yeah.
And in that
But it's
moment,
already
anything
happening.
is possible.
Yes.
Sometimes even a healing can happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Burdens are lifted.
Yes.
Because now we
Yes.
are
Yeah.
in His
In
presence.
the presence of the Lord.
But the focus is not on the music.
Mm-mm.
The focus is on Him.
is on God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the spirit comes before the skill.
Yeah, God's presence
God's
Yes.
presence.
is actually what
It's like
worship
the
is.
basis. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Bring in His
so
presence.
maybe the question that you and I, Alicia, need to ask ourselves
Yeah.
is, as worship ministers
Mm.
and as ministry musicians,
Yeah.
are we carrying the presence of God? Because there is no worship outside His presence.
There's no worship outside His
Yeah.
presence.
And we were actually created to worship.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
To be eternally with Him.
And
be
that's why,
eternally
let me
with
even
Him.
tell you,
Yeah.
let's even go home. There are so many misconceptions that we've had
Yes.
growing up. Like personally,
Yeah.
Yeah.
growing up, I could hear like, we are going to worship God on Sunday. So Monday to Friday, nothing. And
Yeah.
then you're telling us, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And sometimes I could ask myself, oh, no, we're really
Yeah.
doing it very wrong.
Yeah.
And so thank you for that. It's so
Yeah.
profound.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's
It's
amazing.
important,
Let me tell you something, Rev, that as a musician,
Yes.
that something that really comes to my mind whenever we're having this discussion
Yeah.
is, and I am now I become the devil's advocate kidogo.
Yes. Yes.
That there are people
Yeah.
who play down music.
Yes.
They just play down. We have
Yeah.
not played down music.
No, we are not.
And what we've done is we have
Put it in
put
its
the
right
right,
perspective.
Put it in
Yes.
the right
yeah.
place.
So,
Yeah.
but does that mean then, because worship is the cake, like we were discussing earlier on just before this recording started, that worship is the cake
Yes. Yes.
and music is the icing.
Exactly.
And you never go to a shop,
Asking
you
for
don't
the
go to think about the best cake shop,
Yeah.
and you tell them, hey, you guys, I love your
Yeah.
icing.
Yeah.
Please give me some icing.
Yeah.
No. You always go and say, I want a cake. I want a red velvet. I want a fruit cake. I want,
Yeah.
And if it does not have icing,
Yes.
imagine it meets all the requirements
Exactly.
of a
It's
cake. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And you can do an event with it.
Yes.
So that worship in its essence is the irreducible minimum.
It
Yeah.
is the irreducible minimum.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But where do we now place music? Is music important? Because if I am
And to what
communing, if I am
extent?
exactly
Yeah.
in our, so that we don't also play down and speak to,
Yeah.
and I don't want to call out generations,
Yes. Yeah.
but speak to some people who play down music.
Music is important.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we love music.
Yeah.
The amazing thing is this: when you think about music,
Yeah.
and when you start study around music, things around music. By the way, I've studied. I have a master's in worship studies.
Whoa.
Right.
Wow.
Okay.
In every culture of the world,
Yeah.
I don't care whether they go to Timbuktu or the ends of the earth. There is some form of music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether they're just playing with sticks or whatever,
Yes.
there is some form of rhythm, there's some form of song,
Yes.
there's
Yes.
some form of musical expression.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I believe that is not accidental.
Yes.
All right.
It is not.
It is not accidental
Yeah.
because it is one of the things, it's a gift. Music is a gift. Music is a very
Wow.
mysterious kind of a thing.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Because there's something that happens when we sing. Have you noticed? Even if by the way, even outside of Christianity, music is still very powerful.
Yeah.
It is very powerful.
Right?
You're right.
Because
It is
even
used
our
in
culture-
occultism.
It is
It is
Everything.
used
everywhere.
yeah.
All right. I mean, like even our African culture.
Yes.
Yes.
There was a death maybe in the community.
Yes.
There will be a song for that.
Yes.
If there's a baby that was born, there was a song
There's
for
a
that.
song.
There was a song for every occasion.
Yes.
I mean, even the African drum
Yes.
was, there was a way they would play it. There was
Yes.
certain rhythms that are
Yeah.
whatever's with that.
Yes.
Music is so powerful, but we have to redeem music.
Come on.
Oh.
It's about redeeming music.
Okay.
Saying this gift is so
Notes.
powerful.
So
we
music
have
has
to
to be
redeem it.
redeemed.
It has to be redeemed.
Because remember, it can be misused and it is misused.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
you've already mentioned occultism and all
Yes.
kinds of
Yeah.
crazy stuff and
Yeah.
what have you. So we have to redeem it and now use it for the purpose for which it was meant for. Jesus sang. All right. Remember when they would gather after they had sung a hymn? That's what the Bible really
Yes.
record. The early apostles also sang.
Yes.
All right. So in other words, music is something that has always been part of God's people.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So which means our responsibility as a musician, as a
Yes.
Christian musician, is to redeem music.
Wow.
So that I give my best creativity
Yes.
to now back to God through
Yes.
writing good music,
Yes.
playing beautifully, and what have you.
Yes.
By the way, you do know that even when it comes to it, and I wish we had time, when you look at the forms of praise,
Yes.
some of them in the Bible,
Yes.
many of them involve music.
Yes.
Zamar,
Yes.
for
Yeah.
example. playing on
Of
stringed
instruments,
and
yeah.
melody. You know, it's actually all captured
Absolutely.
in the scripture.
Yeah.
And it is God who has given
Toda,
us that.
yada.
Yeah, Toda, Yada, and all,
Yes.
all those, right? And it's all captured in the scriptures. There's a place for instruments. There's a
Yes.
place for drums. There's a place for...
Please say
So-
that slowly.
Everything,
There's
slowly.
a place
Musicians
for
need to
instruments.
hear.
You know, I mean, as Ketron say, my glory. Okay,
Yeah.
So there's a place for instruments.
There's a place for
Instruments.
Saul says,
Yeah.
"Is there a skilled man?" When he's very disturbed, he says, "Is
Yeah.
there a skilled,
Yeah.
harpist, so to say?" You know,
Yeah.
Let me get
and he's brought.
let me help you.
Yes.
That particular incident that you're referring to, remember, before the prophet, I think it was Elisha,
Yeah.
before he could prophesy,
Yes.
he said, bring me
me
a
a-
skilled harpist.
Yes.
Killed.
While the harpist was playing,
The Spirit of the Lord came upon him.
upon
Yes,
him.
I know it. Yes.
You know, in other words, it is so powerful
Yes.
that the prophet recognized
The
that
place
there's a
of
place for
music.
music. You remember
Yes.
at one point, King Jehoshaphat,
Yes.
they're going out to war.
Yes.
And God says, put the musicians at the front.
Yes.
And when they began to worship,
Yes.
the army didn't have to fight.
Yes.
They only had to come and collect the spoils.
Yeah.
Because God went ahead of them. So in other words, music has its place. And I can go on and on.
Yeah.
You remember
Saul.
King
In
Saul
fact, what I
and-
was trying to quote was
Yes.
actually Saul,
Yeah.
who says, because Saul also himself, he asks for a musician.
Yes.
And then he's told, no, actually we have a fine musician
the
called
son
David.
of David. Yes.
Yeah,
the
son of
Jesse.
Jesse. In
Yes.
whom the
The
Spirit
Spirit of the Lord is.
Dwell.
And remember, he will play. And at that time, of course, Saul was under demonic oppression.
Yes.
He will play, and what will happen?
He would be delivered.
The demonic oppression will actually disappear.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, come to the New Testament.
Yeah.
Paul and Silas,
Yes.
they're in prison. What are they
They're-
doing?
They're singing.
They're singing.
Wow.
The singing.
And in response to that singing,
Mm.
a miracle happens. They were not singing to get out of jail.
Wow.
All right?
Yes.
They didn't have Act 16 and say, hey, now, Act 16 says we should be singing.
Yeah. No.
They didn't have. They had been beaten. They were having a rough day. So they just say, no.
They said,
what?
why
The
not?
least we can do.
Yeah.
It's
is
just-
we are
What's the harm?
shackled.
Yeah.
What's the
Let's
harm?
worship.
Let's just worship because this
Yeah.
God has been good to us. And out of their singing,
Yes.
God responds.
Mm.
Wow.
So, which tells you that God Himself,
Yes.
He's the author of all the music.
Yes.
He loves music. He responds when His people actually sing to Him. So, music, let's be in agreement,
Yes.
is important. It is powerful.
It's powerful.
But the focus should not be on the music.
It should be on the
Should not be on
worship.
the song.
Yes.
The focus should be on God,
God
the one we are
himself.
singing about.
We cannot
His
spoil. We are
presence.
not going to spoil this
We
episode
can't.
anymore.
We can't.
We're just going to lock it there. Music
Yes.
is a vehicle,
It is a vehicle.
but the heart of worship is God's presence.
It's
God's
God's
presence.
presence.
So anything outside His presence is not worship.
That's not
Not
worship.
worship.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
a blessed one. We are really glad that you're here. We are going to be having more of this, and I'm excited. I am mind blown. You'll allow me to decompress kidogo. You want to wish people a blessed week, please?
Think about this.
Yeah.
This is too much to let it miss you. So I pray that God is going to continue to speak to you and help you as a worshiper and as a worship leader and even as a congregant, because I believe even we have been called to worship God despite you being knowing how to play an instrument, singing. Even as a congregant, you're a worshiper. So
Amen.
may the Lord help us.
Amen. Carry His
Yeah.
presence.
Yes.
His
Amen.
presence.
Blessings.